Well, our next speaker is an individual you've heard from before, Denean Tomlin. She's going to be talking on industrial and technological benefits, the ITB, Alberta's opportunity to get in the game. So Denean, welcome back. She's going to be speaking on ITBs for short, and providing information from her expertise and the world ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try this a little bit differently because I'm too blind to see that, and I couldn't see that from behind the podium. So let's try a different dance today. Well, that is me, so let's move on to something more important. I'm going the wrong direction. Oh, it helps when you turn it the right side up. Excellent. Okay. Show of hands in the room, how many people have heard of industrial and technological benefits other than in the introduction? Excellent. How many people think that it's a program with big buckets of money for investment for small and medium business? Excellent. I'm here to disappoint you. All right. So, as introduced, I'm from a company called Arcfield. I was from a company called Peraton until we were divested, and so all of that's very confusing. But it was Harris, then it was Peraton, now it's Arcfield. And so the story I'm going to tell you today is all about the same company with a bunch of different names. So Arcfield Corporate, we're head office in Chantilly, Virginia, 16 offices around the world, 1,200 employees and growing, and we take care of really critical missions for all the three-letter agencies. We're taking care of things from space to ground and all important things in between. And so what do we do in Canada? So in Canada, Arcfield Canada, there's our building up in northeast Calgary, 75,000 square feet, 120 people roughly, doing engineering on the F-18 avionics program. And so we've got a bunch of locations in Canada. You can see by the map. Head office, proud to say, in Calgary for a defense company instead of in Ottawa or in Quebec. We service the windows on the bases in Cold Lake and Bagottville, and of course we've got some executives in Ottawa and with the customer in Gatineau. The core capabilities of our company are maintenance and repair, engineering solutions, and supply chain management for the FA-18 for the Department of National Defense and the Royal Canadian Air Force. And these are the programs that we have at the top, and these are some of the countries and the Air Force programs that we currently support. So I'm just trying to set the stage for who we are so you understand why the ITBs are important. These are a bunch of the companies that we do business with, and so it may look like they're competition, and sometimes they are, and sometimes they're partners. And so these companies also are what's called contractors, primes, or obligors. So we're going to talk about ITBs and how they can benefit your company or your organization. So they're industrial technological benefits. They are a government policy. The policy is driven from the defense industry. And so when we talk about the defense industry and defense spending, I've got a couple of data points on the far left of the screen. $164 billion committed in capital investments. It's historically increased. 100% of that money will be invested in Canada. And that means that all companies and academic institutions can find a way to participate. There's enough going on that if you find your niche, you can find your way to participate. In addition, a couple of those new things, NORAD modernization, we've all heard about that, and the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, that has spurred on additional activities that are causing defense spending to increase. So this is directly taken off the government website. There are contracts that are awarded, and those contracts, if they're in excess of $100 million, unless they're special in the 20 to 100 million, they're given what's called an obligation. And so when the defense contractor, the prime, is given the contract, if it's a $100 million contract, congratulations, you now have a $100 million obligation. Now, what that means is the defense prime is now an obligor who has to invest the equivalent of the contract in the Canadian economy. So, why is the policy in place? It's supposed to increase the key industrial areas or the industrial areas that are growing in Canada. It's to increase work. It's to increase capability. It's to increase capacity. It's to increase innovation and the growth of small business. And so what's important is my little red pointer working? I don't know. Yay, look at that. I have tech. All eligible contracts have a 100% offset requirement. So remember that. When a defense prime is given a contract, that means 100% of the value of that contract has an obligation to invest. So there's no money given to invest. The defense prime is required to find the money in their own budget to invest. Does that mean we could inflate our prices, our costs? Sure. Does it mean we put R&D budgets in place? Sure. But it doesn't mean the Canadian government awards us a big bucket of money and says, go invest this in the economy. So in the ITB policy, there are a couple of transaction types. We've got our direct transactions. So that's when you're building something. If your company is helping us build the thing or do the contract, you're in a direct engagement with us. That would be a direct. The indirect is something where we take money and we invest in future technology. Perhaps my company has a vision to grow or diversify in a certain area. That would be something that is an indirect. And I'm going to share with you this thing that you've never heard of today called Sky Census. And we're going to talk about how we invested some money to make our obligation go down and to diversify our company into a new area of business. But first, we're going to talk about the different kinds of investments. So we can invest in post-secondaries and public research institutions. We can invest in what's called a consortium transaction, where we take a small business and a post-secondary and put them together. We can do something called an investment framework, which is what Sky Census is. Or we can do a venture capital fund transaction. And I will tell you that's the least one used because it's the least one understood. So we're just going to assume that money goes in to the recipient, a project is created, and you, the recipient of the money, are doing what we've contracted you to do, what we've engaged you to do. We are the ones responsible for doing this part. So I get the job in my company to have the magic wand and do the magic math, because my job is to spend as little as possible to get as much out at the other end. So the Sky Census project, I came to work and they said, you've got a $105 million problem. It's an obligation that we have been carrying and we need it to go away. And you can spend as little as possible to make that happen. So I did what was called an investment framework. Red button, please. Investment framework, where we've invested over 5 years about $15 million in 3 small companies in Alberta. And I get to do the magic math. You guys don't have to worry about it, but I got a 9 times multiplier on the cash. I got a 7 times multiplier on the donation of equipment. And I got a 4 times for donating my time or those of my colleagues in managing the program. And so what happens is we do the magic math, and then we report back to the government organization known as ISET, or Innovation, Science, and Economic Development. And we say, this is what we've done. And this is what we'd like in return as a credit against our obligation. So we spend the money, they reduce our obligation, and you, the recipient, gets to do research, innovation, or provide a service or product to help us with our company. So these are a couple of points that I put together so that you guys would understand the difference. And I've already been kind of illustrating them. The defense prime, the ITB manager, needs to worry about the policy. Your job is to put together a really good project that I can't live without and that I'm willing to take to my finance team and my C-suite and say, this aligns with our business priorities and our business plans. And so we need to invest in this company. And by the way, it's going to help us reduce our obligation. If we're not a robotics, if you're a robotics company and we're not into robotics, if you're doing something in space and I do something on ground, there's probably not an alignment. Doesn't mean your project's not a great one. So what you'd ask me is, hey, Denean, do you know any other ITB managers in the defense industry that might be interested in what we do? And so what I recommend is that you guys go out. If you really want to get in the defense industry, take your good ideas and go to defense events and meet ITB managers. We have a network. There's not many of us. I think I'm one of 30 or 40 people in all of Canada that do this for a living. There's not many of us. So we all know each other, and we all know the good companies to work for, and we recommend to each other the good companies or the good projects that are out there. So like I said, do your research, know the company, know what my pain points are. We service a really old jet called an F-18. So if you're going to bring me new technology that really belongs on the F-35, I probably am not interested. But if you're going to help me with the sundowning of that aircraft, or you're going to help me with dealing with obsolescence with my parts, that's something we might want to talk about and invest. And that would be one of those directs. So let's get into SkySenses. Okay, we've talked about it a lot. 5-year investment, $15 million. It was kind of cool to take a page from Barry's presentation. I was a consultant. I was an ITB consultant. I took some companies, put together a project, and went into the boardroom of what was Peraton and presented it. And they said, that's such a great idea. How about we invest in it and hire you as the ITB manager? So I got a job and a project out of it. So what we did is we put these companies together, and they, even though they were competition, they decided to work collaboratively towards the advancement of beyond visual line of sight. We worked on a technology roadmap, a 5-year plan, and we've come together and we're delivering those 4 points in the middle. We've talked about them a little bit today: data analytics, detect and avoid, processes and procedures, and an airworthiness program. So that's great for the industry, and it's great for us because we might, who knows, diversify into RPAS. But most importantly, it took care of the $105 million problem that we had on our books between the government and Arkfield. I forgot who I worked for. All right. Partner company pedigrees. We've talked a little bit about these guys, but of course I can't say enough about the bright young minds that are part of these companies, and I'm hoping that somewhere out there they're listening so they know that how much we appreciate how smart these guys are. But Arium Analytics, Canadian UAVs, and BVLOS Inc. have absolutely raised the standards and raised the bar when it comes to BVLOS. All we did was give them the money and some rules and how to engage. They took it from there, and they have absolutely changed the landscape. So we're really proud of them for that here in Alberta. So SkySenses today has a vision and a mission, and like I said, the path to commercialization is crazy. ISET is so happy, Innovation, Science, and Economic Development, because not only did we, as a defense prime, take care of our obligation, or we will at the end of the 5 years, but we've also taken three small medium business. We've put them on a path to commercialization. They were already successful when we met them, but they have increased their success, increased their IP, their portfolio. They have increased the ability to go into new markets, and that's what the ITB policy is all about. And so what we have done with that money is as Amy and I shared with you this morning, we've been part of the RTM or traffic management trial to the point now where we're doing a demonstration. We've created the drone airworthiness framework that was shared with you today from Foremost and BVLOS Inc. We've influenced the regulations and standards because we've developed a crazy good relationship with Transport Canada that these companies already had. It just helped us move the bar. A ground-based radar development for detect and avoid, that was built from an out-of-the-box technology, and then it was built and enhanced, and it's doing things they never even expected. And now we're networking them, and we're building these crazy networked radar systems where we can see the fingerprint of airspace and everything in it, smoke, we can see snow, and we can see drones too. And now there's calls from places like the Ukraine saying, how can we use that to protect our people? So interesting things are happening. We're proud to say we had the largest BVLOS survey in Canada as part of a Canadian UAVs operation, as part of an Arium Analytics operation, data collected in over 12 airports, I think 3,000 flights now in airports. And as I mentioned, my proud achievement for ArcField to boast is the investment framework is the largest, or at least it was, of its kind with ISED, because it's the largest by way of 3 companies. It's a very big project. It's a big project because it was the largest investment in the drone industry at the time, and it also is not only taking care of the obligation, taking the check marks for the policy, but it's also allowing all 4 companies to diversify and grow. So as it says there, next is the commercialization of product and service offerings and revenues for all companies. Because I don't know, it's probably not a secret, the F-18s aren't going to fly forever, maybe 2035, 6 or 7, but we're going to need to diversify too. So hopefully this is going to help our path to diversification. So that leaves 5 minutes for Q&A, and I hope you guys all know exactly what the policy is about now.
Thank you, Denean. I actually always like it when I attend a presentation and I get a sense, oh, I get it now. So thank you. That was very helpful. So we're going to Slido again, looking for questions. And as we have before, since that takes 20 or 30 seconds, let's see if there's questions in the room about what we've learned about these possibilities. Questions locally?
Well, considering it can see everything in airspace, as long as it's within those 10 to 15 nautical miles, I think, Steve, it would probably see a balloon, right? Not at 60,000 feet. There you go. He's the radar man.
If you're missing the questions from the remote parties, we just had a couple questions about the ability of Sparrowhawk to detect balloons. There is a question on Slido now. Are there penalties for not fulfilling your ITB obligations?
Well, that is such a good question because that talks about reputation management. When a U.S. company buys a Canadian company and has an obligation, they're like, we'll just pay liquidated damages. We're like, no, 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 you don't want to do that. We'll never get a contract again. So there are liquidated damages and reputation impact, absolutely. And so there's no known default currently in the policy that has been paid out in LDs. So none publicly anyway. But yes, there are damages for sure.
Thank you. There is a question there about the mathematics of it. You mentioned a $15 million investment into Sky Census, but you had reached your obligation of $100 million. Is that because of the multipliers?
That and my magic wand, yes. So it is the multipliers, and it's the combination of the donations and the in-kind and the licensing and the, yes, it is absolutely the multipliers, and that's why it's so important for you to worry about the project and me to worry about the policy.
Thank you. Let's see, what else do we have? We have, do you link with venture capitalists to leverage investments?
It is within the policy that it can be done. We have not, we're owned by a VC firm, strangely enough, but we have not leveraged outside VC investments. Now, the small and medium businesses that we're doing business with very well may, but not in the construct of the ITB project itself.
Thank you. Let's keep going here. Is ITB management available for emergency services?
Well, ITBs are policies, so they are assigned to defense contract procurements or Coast Guard procurements. So if the Canadian government under emergency services did a large procurement, then if it was over $100 million, there would be an ITB obligation attached to it.
Thank you. This, for managers such as yourself, how important is the multiplier versus the tech update to your company?
I love that because that's the priority 1 versus priority 1. Number 1 priority, reduce your obligation. Number 1 priority, part 2, is make sure your money spent on your ITB project yields us a return on investment. And so they're competing priorities, but they are both critical, and I can't think of a company in with good fiscal prudence that would give $15 million to somebody and say, that's okay, this just took care of the obligation, we don't need anything else, right? It's not going to happen. They want something back. So absolutely, it is scrutinized to return something back to the company by way of technology capability or reduction of operation costs or something like that.
Thank you. Actually, we are generating more questions now. So are there any more or any more tech companies in Alberta on your radar to invest with?
Well, personally, I've got a great portfolio of companies I would love to invest with that I haven't yet, and some are attending this conference for sure. But the bottom line is that we're fully invested currently with Sky Census, and what that means is I don't have any obligations to fulfill, so I don't have any new projects on the horizon. But there is one thing I didn't touch on, which is a rabbit hole, but all I'll say is that defense companies can do projects to build a credit bank. So I can do a project, and as long as I've got my finance and department and C-suite giving me the money, then I build a credit like an RRSP, and then I can use that for future obligations. So it is possible, but I would have to have the willingness corporately to be able to build that credit.
There's at least 2 questions remaining. One is, what is the immediate result or questions coming from the Ukraine experiences regarding drones, and how is it affecting the industry?
I wish I could really give a quality answer, because my visibility to that has been restricted to the conversations we've had amongst the project team. But what we've been made aware of, and is publicly known for anybody following the news, is that our government is doing what it can to support the Ukraine, and in part they have rallied the defense industry through our Canadian Defense Association, reaching out to small business, saying, what is it you've got, what are you doing that will help the Ukraine? And so they're asking us to submit project ideas, and they don't have to be fully fleshed out projects. They want to know what we can or possibly will be willing to do to help some of the problems over there. So some of that does certainly fall into drones, and in our little corner of the world, it just so happened that the Sparrowhawk, if set up under the right conditions, can see incoming threats, and it's a low cost. It's under a couple $100,000 American, and for a radar system to be able to protect a community, that's not a huge cost.
Thank you. We have one last question, so we may as well handle it now. Do you look to ways to leverage other government-funded programs with ITB requirements?
Wish I could. Can't double dip. So we can allow the small and medium business or the academic institution to leverage. So if they've got government grant funding or government programs funding of some kind, we can still invest our money and they can leverage it. So I have personally received requests to say, we want to go after this money. Will you tell them that as an industry partner, you're giving us this money so that we can make sure that they're going hand in hand, so the government contribution has that safety. And so we do that. So, but I cannot layer government money on the program, unfortunately.
Well, it does appear that we've expired with the Slido questions, so thank you very much, Denean, for sharing your knowledge and experience.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, everybody.